welcome to Ideas with Impact podcast. I am so thrilled to introduce Julie Kramer to the show. She's a gifted shamanic healer and a teacher. So hello, Julie. How are you today?
Hello, Aleksandra. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very well today.
So let's jump in quickly, and I have a
Mhm.
couple questions for you. I think the audience will also be very interested because I've never had anybody who practices shamanic practice on my show,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I myself have experienced it myself because I've been very drawn
Mm.
to the shamanic drumming,
Mhm.
and when I
Mhm.
meditated, I have what someone has mentioned to me, been to the first level of my journey,
Mhm. Mhm.
which was quite interesting. But let's go and say, what is shamanism and how would you describe it, its core principles?
Mhm. Yes, certainly. I appreciate you starting with that question because I think it helps to establish something of a framework for our conversation. And especially if you haven't yet had a shamanic healer or shamanic practitioner or shamanic teacher on your podcast, perhaps your listeners are wondering what that term means as well. And so the term shaman comes from the Tungus tribe in Siberia, and I've heard it translated in a few different ways, translated to heat up or to raise up, referring to the states of consciousness that a shaman enters into in order to receive guidance and facilitate healing on behalf of their community. So a shaman would classically be someone who was recognized and identified by and honored by the community in which they practiced and served, as being someone who had access to the spirit world, who could consult benevolent helping spirits for the purpose of receiving guidance, which would be called divination, or for the purpose of facilitating healing on behalf of the community. And so I would say that's classically a way of thinking about the term shaman. I personally feel that that's a spiritual honorific, and by that, what I mean is that I wouldn't self proclaim or self describe as a shaman per se, although I gladly describe myself as and refer to myself as a shamanic practitioner
Mm-hmm.
or a spiritual practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, those terms simply mean that I'm working in partnership with the spirit world, that the nature of the work that I do involves entering into natural trance states using drumming, whistling, singing, rattling, and dancing in order to create altered states of consciousness that enable me and others to perceive the presence of the helping spirits who I feel are all around us all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and to consult them to seek out their wisdom and guidance and to facilitate healing on their behalf. And so, what that means is that we, as shamanic healers or spiritual healers, hold the belief and the understanding that we live in a multidimensional reality, that there are spectrums of reality in addition to our physical world that we perceive through our physical senses that are accessible through our more subtle senses. And there are benevolent helping spirits who inhabit those other spectrums of reality, who are compassionate, who are wise, and who are interested in supporting our evolution, who are devoted, I would even say, to our well being and evolution. So, very accessible and very much wanting to offer us their care and support.
So when you um, practice or journeying, how
Mhm.
do you connect with the spirit? Like, is that again through meditation?
Yes, yes. So I use, as I said, natural trance state. So singing, whistling, dancing, rattling, and drumming to create an altered state of consciousness. And what has been demonstrated is that when we're exposed to repetitive drumming or the sound of repetitive rattling, that alters our brainwave activity. So speaking in broad terms, our brainwave activity shifts from beta to alpha to theta. And my work lies in stabilizing my awareness in theta so that I'm in an open and expansive state. I'm in an altered state of consciousness. And then the subtle pathways of perception open. And so there are subtle correlates to our physical senses that enable us to perceive in the invisible realms, if you will. So just as we can use our physical senses to perceive the physical world, we actually have subtle senses that enable us to perceive the non-physical world. And so the practice of journeying involves effectively sending our awareness into the non-physical worlds, into those other spectrums of reality in order to meet with trusted, benevolent, helping spirits. So we would perceive them through our subtle senses. So we might hear messages from them, which would be clairaudience. So the auditory sense, but the subtle version of that, we might see them, we might see their form and certain features and their dress and adornments and so forth. That would be clairvoyance. We might sense their presence. We might have certain sensations in being in their presence, and that would be clairsentience. And so what we're doing is journeying into these invisible realms in order to contact the helping spirits who are with us all the time. Although in truth, what's also possible, even as I just sit here with you, Aleksandra, is that I can perceive the presence of my helping spirits right here in the room. And so sometimes it's less a matter of embarking upon a journey or going somewhere, but rather opening our awareness further or more widely, perhaps, in order to perceive the helping spirits who are right here around us all the time. And so that could be, in my case, I'm perceiving specific helping spirits who often stand with me, beside me, behind me. But even as I glance outside, of course, you can't see my view, but I'm looking into my garden. So the spirits of the plants and the spirits of the trees. So there are also spiritual intelligences, if you will, that enliven the physical world. And I would say that's a commonly held belief in shamanism, the belief that everything is enlivened with spirit, with intelligence, and that we can contact that spiritual essence, if you will, simply by entering into natural trance states. We don't need to do anything more exotic than that. It's already right here and so accessible and available.
Is this something that someone would have to raise their frequency to experience something like this, or anybody could go through this journey?
Well, I genuinely believe that everyone can learn how to journey, that anyone can learn how to journey. And the reason I feel that way is because that's been my experience. I've been teaching people how to journey since 2003. And so I myself have taught a great many people, but I've also had two teachers, Sandra Ingerman and Betsy Bergstrom, who themselves have taught a very great many people also. And although sometimes it takes someone a little longer than perhaps another person, in other words, not everybody can journey the first time they try necessarily. Sometimes it takes a few tries, but I genuinely believe that anyone can, that everyone can. And the reason I feel that way is because shamanism has been practiced on every continent since the beginning of recorded history. And so what that means is that we all have ancestors who practiced in partnership with spirit, whether those are recent or more distant ancestors. We all have ancestors who believed that we could access spirit and who believed that we inhabited a multidimensional universe, not just a physical one. And so I feel that it's in our DNA, in everyone's DNA. Now, certainly some people have more recent ancestors who practiced in that way. Some people have living family members practicing in that way. Some lineages have remained intact, others have been broken or become hidden or gone underground. But as we look back into our ancestry, we all find at some point that there is that knowing that this is a world that is animated by spirit. And so for me, it's a process of remembering more so than learning something from scratch.
Mm. Have you been always drawn to shamanic practice, or this is something that you develop at very young age? How did it start it for you?
Well, I was always very curious about the spirit world, although I didn't have a particular religious or spiritual framework. I was raised within a secular family. Although I would say there's a little bit of interest in perhaps the New Age. That might be an appropriate way of describing it. And there were occasions in my childhood or throughout my childhood when family members who had an interest in the spirit world would introduce me. So I've had occasions with family members, two in particular, um, as a young person, two readings from two seers, two psychics. One when I was a young adolescent, and one as an older adolescent, from two different family members who offered those to me as gifts. And that was helpful because it helped me begin to put language around my curiosity about the spirit world. I was convinced of the existence of spirits, although I don't know where that conviction came from. It certainly didn't come from my family of origin. I feel like I came into this life with that conviction, but I didn't know anything about shamanism. I didn't know the terms shaman or shamanic or shamanism. I was living at Hollyhock on Cortes Island here in British Columbia. That's a retreat center here in Western Canada. And I was working there and living there as a 26-year-old when I took an introductory workshop where I learned how to journey. And that was something that came very naturally to me. So then I had, for the first time in my life, at the age of 26, a framework. I had a path. I had a practice. I had a means for initiating contact with the spirits. And up until that time, although I had had two readings, two other people serving as intermediaries, I didn't have my own way of contacting the helping spirits. And that's why I became so inspired very early on about teaching people how to journey. So that introduction came for me at the age of 26 in the year 2000. And by 2003, I was teaching people how to journey because I was so inspired that I had a practice that I could teach to anyone for contacting the helping spirits. Because I think for many people, there's a curiosity, there's an openness, there's a felt sense, but we can feel quite powerless or quite passive, waiting for divine intervention or waiting for signs or waiting for synchronicities. And thankfully, those things happen often. And to me, those are beautiful indicators that the helping spirits are supporting us and guiding us. But it's a two-way street. And it was so empowering for me to learn a practice for initiating contact so that whenever I needed help, whenever I wanted to explore something, whenever I wanted guidance, whenever I was in need of healing, I could journey anytime at will. And that was incredibly empowering for me and incredibly inspiring, which is why I became so passionate about teaching other people how to journey.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. I had for me myself, I was going through some difficult time in my life as well about 8 years ago, and I kept on seeing this. Originally, I thought I wasn't sure if it was a dog or if it was a wolf, and then someone, same thing, someone in the community here mentioned it, and they're like, "Well, why don't you try to go into um, the shamanic journeying and see what would happen?"
Yeah.
So I remember going on YouTube and looking for shamanic drumming, and I found something that really, like, oh my goodness, it was so quick that I went there and I saw the animal. And then I went to see this person and I said, yeah, this is what it is. It's a white wolf. And I guess at that moment in my life, I needed that animal
Mm.
to
Yeah.
be with me, to get me through that stuckness, to move on to
Mm-hmm.
the next level in my life, which was absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
I haven't
Uh-huh.
seen it lately, but yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. Place to be, and knowing that these spirit animals are there to help us through when we go through really, really hard time.
Yes, absolutely. And their medicine is designed to be of support to you. And so, one thing about our partnerships with the helping spirits is that they're very deliberate, they're very intentional, there's a specificity to it. I find the helping spirits are surgically precise
Mm,
in what they share with us. And although I don't know what the white wolf was bringing for you, because white wolf could bring different medicine for different people, but I'm sure that it was what you needed at the time. And that's always been my experience with the helping
mhm.
spirits.
Yeah. Oh, I need to sit down and getting back into it just to see. I haven't been, honestly. It's life. It's just got busy, and I haven't had a time to get myself back into meditating. But that's something that I really need to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's noteworthy that it was so immediate for you,
Mhm.
Aleksandra, that without training, without attending a workshop, with very little
Yeah.
instruction,
Hmm.
but with the drumming, that you were able to enter into an altered state so easily and perceive your white wolf so immediately. I think that's quite noteworthy that it was
Hmm.
so natural for you. That's how I felt too. It
Hmm.
just felt so natural to me, and everything made sense to me, because for me, the world without the presence of the helping spirits didn't make sense. I
Hmm.
didn't feel at home here. And then when I began to experience the world as being animated by
Hmm.
spirit, then I began to feel at home.
Hmm. That's beautifully said. I feel the same. Yeah. So, can spirits become stuck or
Mm,
trapped here on Earth?
mm. Yes, most definitely. The common means by which that happens is at the time of death, when someone's passing occurs, but they don't cross over successfully. That would be the language that I would use.
Hmm.
And sometimes that can happen when the death itself has been a violent one or an unexpected one. Sometimes that can happen when there are a lot of attachments. And so, in actual fact, our attachments to our loved ones who pass away can preclude their soul from crossing over and can keep them stuck here.
Hmm.
And the attachments of the dead, those who have passed, who may be attached to their belongings, who may be attached to their status or their accomplishments, who may be attached to their loved ones, that can preclude them from crossing over successfully.
Hmm.
And a very common reason that people don't cross over successfully at the time of death is fear. And that could be fear of punishment, if people feel that they have behaved in ways that have caused harm. Depending on what their religious or spiritual framework is, they may be afraid of going to hell, they may be afraid of being punished or purgatory. They may be afraid that they won't be forgiven, that they won't be received by compassionate helping spirits. They may feel that they're undeserving of that. People can fail to cross over successfully because even though compassionate spirits come for them to conduct them at the time of their death, these are, again, in keeping with the theme of specialization with our helping spirits, the precision of their medicine, there are helping spirits called psychopomp allies who specialize in providing support at the time of death or as death is approaching.
Hmm.
And the word psychopomp is traced back to ancient Greece, and it translates to conveyor or conductor of souls. So these are known allies cross-culturally that are expected to be present around the time of death, so leading up to or at or just after the time of death, to conduct the souls of those who have died. However, people can misinterpret their presence, either not realizing that they've died if the death was a sudden or unexpected one, and not thinking those psychopomp allies are there for them because they don't realize that they're dead,
Right.
or they can mistake them or misperceive them. And that can happen sometimes when death has occurred at a time when the person's consciousness is severely altered. So a drug overdose, for example, or
Accident.
yes, or someone who's heavily medicated in order to manage their pain. So their perceptions may not be as accurate. So there are myriad reasons why at the time of death, not everyone crosses over. And in my work, we call those beings suffering beings, and we hold them with a great deal of care and compassion. They may need help in order to cross over after that window has passed. And so there's a window of availability for everyone. And in my experience, helping spirits come for everyone, no matter who you are and what you've done or not done. But not everybody agrees to go with them. And so some people do get stuck here. They may be lost, they may be confused, and they can become attached to living people. They can become attached to buildings and places as well. And when they become attached to living people, that's what we would call possession illness. And so the remedy for that is called compassionate depossession. And that's when we very lovingly and gently help that soul who no longer has their own body because their body has died. So we help their soul become decoupled from the living person and the living person's body that they've become attached to.
Okay. It's very interesting you just said fear, because
Yeah.
we do live in fear here in our physical world. But I had
Yeah.
no idea that they also, on the other side, live in fear because of that confusion, not knowing if they're dead or alive in a way, right? So it's quite interesting to hear that from you, say that fear is stuck with us for quite some time. So,
Yes.
so how would, for example, if someone, let's say, if the soul is attached to a human being, how can an individual um, go through a process where they can help that person or that soul move on to the other side?
Yes. So I would say, and perhaps this is my bias as a teacher, because I train people to be spiritual healers. That's the focus of my work, is that I train people to be shamanic healers, which includes an extensive skill set. So my training takes 3 years in order for people to become professional shamanic healers and to learn a variety of skills, processes, and practices to tend to the spiritual well-being of others. And so I would say that when possession illness is present, and you may not know that necessarily, but you may be having inexplicable symptoms, then to seek out a trained practitioner. And I know you'll give me the opportunity to share my website with your audience later. I always welcome people reaching out to me for referrals, because then I can put you in contact with my students and provide you with a referral for a practitioner who is well trained and experienced when it comes to tending to the spiritual well-being of others. And that would be a practitioner who would then use compassionate depossession to help that soul, that disembodied soul, if you will, disincarnate soul, become separated from the person they've become attached to, and then assisted in going to the light. And that would be in partnership with the psychopomp ally. So that might be angelic beings that might be specific gods or goddesses from specific cultures, depending on the person's heritage and so forth, the person who died, I mean. Whatever help they need will be offered, and that would be facilitated by a spiritual healer or a shamanic healer trained in that work so that it happens in a good way. Because we don't want to just say, banish ye spirit, and send them off just away from us or away from our home or our hotel room. They need help. We want them to go to the light so that they can continue evolving. That's why we refer to them as suffering beings, because they're in a state of suffering. They're not evolving any longer. They don't belong here anymore. They've died. Their lifetime has come to an end. It's time for their spiritual journey to continue. And sometimes that needs to be facilitated by a spiritual healer.
Yeah, to help them and say it's okay, you're loved and
Yes.
you're protected, and yeah, it's really nice to hear that they can do that. How can individuals protect themselves from negative or harmful spirits? What would you suggest what people can do? Oh,
Yes. Well, the position that I take is that ideally we would consult a variety of experts in order to tend to our overall well-being. And I think increasingly certain modalities that might have been considered to be more esoteric in years past are becoming more widely embraced. And my hope is that spiritual healing or shamanic healing will be among those modalities that become more widely embraced. I would say I hope to live long enough to see shamanic healing become ordinary, which it was for our ancestors and still is within some cultural contexts, but I would say generally not in the West. And yet, the idea that we would consider our well-being through every other lens except that one makes so little sense if you consider that we are spiritual beings animating these physical bodies at this time. We're spirits animating human forms, but these forms are impermanent, they're temporary, and yet our spirits will carry on. And so for me, an integrated or holistic approach to well-being includes looking through a spiritual lens. And so, yes, go to your medical doctor, and yes, go to your acupuncturist, and yes, go to your energy medicine practitioner, and yes, go to your therapist or psychiatrist, and yes, go to your massage therapist, et cetera, and seek out the services of a skilled expert shamanic practitioner to consider your well-being and the well-being of your home and the place where you live through that lens, because there can be suffering beings who are present. They can be attached to us, they can be attached to places, structures, and land, and they may not even know where they are. They may not even know that they're causing dissonance.
yeah.
They may not have any ill intent at all in their hearts, but the very nature of their presence, that uncanny feeling that you described, can create for us a feeling of unease. And they may not want that. They're not trying to make us uncomfortable. Oftentimes, they're very sincerely in need of help. Even though we can experience their presence in ways that may feel uncanny or even frightening, that doesn't mean they're trying to scare us or they mean us any harm by any means. But just their felt presence can be unsettling. And so I would say seek out the services of someone who knows how to journey and see. Is there anyone else there? Maybe you moved into a home where someone experienced a sudden death, a previous owner or a previous tenant, and they became stuck there because they didn't know they had died, and they just stayed in the place that was familiar to them. And yet you move in and there's that, like you said, you know, the chilling feeling, the hair standing up, or those cold spots, or yes, those are real, those are legitimate. And I think sometimes we can be dismissive, like, oh, I'm just making this up, or, you know, this is no big deal.
Oh no, I think when you know, you know.
Right. Yeah. So then reach out to someone who's
Yeah.
trained in clearing spaces
Mm-hmm.
and clearing people, and ask for their gifts to be brought to bear on the situation, because they'll be able to look through the right lens. Because you can look through a psychological lens all day long in a situation like that, and you'll never get to the root of the problem.
Right.
You have to look through a spiritual lens.
Mm. Yeah, for me, when I feel something around me, what I do is I close my eyes, and what I will do is I will basically, in my thoughts, tell them to move to the light or move somewhere. I'm like, just
Yeah.
please let me be.
Yeah.
Let me be. I'm okay. Yeah, I had an incident when I was in Central America where I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt such a pressure, like something was holding me down. And
Yeah.
I think in the beginning I panicked when I woke up. It's like it felt like someone was sitting on my chest. And then slowly I said, no, you need to leave me be. I need you to move on. Let me be. And it left. And it was quite
Hmm.
experience.
Well, I think there are a lot of layers to what you're sharing, including how do we tell the difference between
Mm,
a visitation from a benevolent helping spirit who's trying to make their presence known to us, which could be by that means, they
mhm,
show themselves to us, they make their presence known. And although I typically emphasize the use of our subtle senses when we're in altered states of consciousness in order to perceive the helping spirits, many people have experiences where they see a helping spirit as clear as day with their physical eyes, just like I'm seeing the plant outside my window
mm,
with my physical eyes. And similarly, people have experiences with touch where it's like a living person is
mhm,
touching you, or, you know, holding your arm, or placing their hand on your chest, or whatever it is. And so I think one of the layers is, how do you tell the difference?
mhm,
And that can be, of course, supported by a practitioner who can journey and vet the helping spirits for you
mhm,
to draw that distinction for you. But what's also true, if I may, is that when you have those kinds of visitations, that can be an initiation, that can be a sign that you carry the medicine of a psychopomp,
mm,
because those those souls that are still here, that may be stuck or maybe lost or confused, they can make themselves known, and they can also keep themselves hidden.
mm,
And when they make themselves known to people, they often do that with people they know can perceive them.
mm,
And if you're someone who can perceive them, that may be an indicator that you carry the medicine of the psychopomp. So just like there are certain helping spirits
mhm,
who specialize in being psychopomps, there are healers, human healers who specialize in being psychopomps, I would say, who carry the signature of the psychopomp.
mm,
And often they know that because they're the ones who have the stories to tell
mm,
about visitations.
mm. Yeah,
And so that may be something to explore.
yeah. Oh, definitely. I feel the connection to the shamanic practice for sure. It's communicating with the other side is quite
Yeah.
interesting for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're obviously communicating with you.
Yeah, it's for me it's a hit and miss.
Hmm.
Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't know. Maybe I just block it for some reason. I just don't want to be bothered. I'm like, okay, no, not
Hmm.
today.
Mhm.
How can shamanic healing effectively address an emotional pain?
Mm. Well, healers who practice in the ways that I do don't distinguish between different types of symptoms
Mhm.
because spiritual illness can present itself as a variety of symptoms. And so there may be an underlying spiritual illness resulting in emotional pain,
Mhm.
in heartache, or in grief, or in anxiety or fear. There may be an underlying spiritual illness that's resulting in or even exacerbating physical pain. And so the symptomatic presentation that a client brings forward could be on any level. They could be experiencing symptoms on any level. And so it could be mental, emotional, psychological, it could be energetic, it could be physical, it could be a combination of things.
Mhm.
And the way that our work works is that we journey to our helping spirits to ask for diagnosis. And so we rely on our helping spirits to say, here's what the causes are of this imbalance or of this symptom, or here's what's exacerbating this situation. And then we address what those causes are. And so, for example, one could be possession illness.
Mhm.
You could have become possessed by a loved one who passed away, who couldn't leave you because of their devotion to you. A very common reason that they become attached to us is because they want to protect us. And
Mhm.
so you could become possessed by a recent passing, in other words, a relative who passed recently, meaning during your lifetime,
Mhm.
who is devoted to you and couldn't bear to leave you alone,
Mhm.
and yet who might have had certain symptoms associated with their dying process. You could begin to develop those symptoms because it's them expressing themselves through
Through
you.
you. Mhm.
Yes.
Very interesting. Wow.
Hmm.
So that would also work in the same way where someone is feeling that to work with a practitioner who can identify these issues and then have that
Yes.
person release, or like we call it, I guess, in the spiritual world, cutting the cords in the way.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yes, so there's also that process. Cord cutting is a remedy for energetic enmeshment.
Mhm.
And so when we've become enmeshed and are having difficulty differentiating, and that's also very, very common. You've probably heard of soul loss
Mhm.
and the remedy for that, which is soul retrieval. Another beautiful practice that is, I would say, now understood more widely, certainly than when I started to do this work over 25 years ago. And my teacher, Sandra Ingerman, I think is the reason for how much more widely understood soul retrieval is. She's the author of the book Soul Retrieval and has brought that teaching through and taught many, many, many practitioners, myself included. And soul retrieval is the remedy for when the soul becomes fragmented or fractured and parts of the soul leave
Mhm.
and can become stuck in other dimensions of reality. Interestingly, it's a form of self preservation. Soul loss, that fracturing of the soul, happens in anticipation of trauma.
Mhm.
And so the soul essence leaves before the impact of the trauma to protect itself. And so the healing involves restoring that beautiful soul essence that didn't experience the
Mhm.
trauma, whether it was a car accident or a breakup or something of that kind. And so there are a number of different types of, I would say, shamanic illness or spiritual illness and their corresponding remedies.
Mhm.
And so the role of the practitioner is to receive the client and to learn about their symptoms and then to journey and ask the helping spirits for diagnosis. So the diagnosis doesn't come from us as practitioners, it comes from the helping spirits.
Mhm.
And then they provide the remedies, what's needed and in what order, And then we help facilitate that in partnership with them.
What would be other signs for that individual?
Yes, well, in the case of possession, it would be the alleviation of the symptoms associated with that possession, which can be quite variable, quite wide ranging, depending on the extent of the overshadowing.
Okay.
But in cases where the overshadowing is quite strong, the person who's the host, if you will, can become quite eclipsed by the presence of the suffering being's memories, their needs, their desires, their proclivities, their fears, their anxieties and worries can become quite pronounced. And for someone, especially if the possession has been long-standing, for someone who doesn't realize that there's another person with them, they might attribute all of those symptoms to themselves. They might try to psychologize what they're experiencing or treat what they're experiencing in that way. And yet, if indeed it is a suffering being, and what's happening is that the suffering being is in control in a certain kind of way, their presence has become quite pronounced and they've become quite overshadowing of the person, then when they leave, once they can be gently decoupled from the person and assisted in going to the light, then what the person experiences is a restoration of their sovereignty, of their truth, of their path, of their sense of knowing who they are and what they want and how they want to live their lives. And so it can be incredibly freeing and unburdening for people. So we would be looking at what are the symptoms associated with this instance of possession, and then are those alleviated by the compassionate depossession? And if so, to what degree? Altogether, or maybe only half of them? And then you're left with, well, some of that might have been mine all along and was maybe being exacerbated, but could there be some additional causes of illness? Because we've all been going to the dentist since we were children. We've been going to the doctor since we were children. And some of us have had the good fortune of going to acupuncturists and massage therapists and craniosacral practitioners here and there as well. But how many of us have been going to shamanic healers since we were children? And yet, what that's right. And yet, what have we experienced in our lifetimes in terms of foreign energy and in terms of trauma? And so when it comes to starting on a journey of spiritual healing, one session is not going to remedy everything that has taken place. Sometimes it can take time and multiple sessions. And very often clients benefit from seeing a shamanic healer ongoingly to support their spiritual evolution, their spiritual growth, to learn how to journey themselves and to form relationships with their own helping spirits. And this really, Aleksandra, goes back to your earlier question about protection. I would say that for me, my way of being protected is to maintain a high frequency. And I do that by being in very close connection to my helping spirits, because I can merge with my helping spirits. I can become filled up with their light. And that strong frequency becomes a natural repellent. And so that's what keeps me safe and protected. And so that's part of our work as shamanic healers, is to keep our bodies and our fields and our homes clear and inspirited.
Yeah, so
And that's how we tend to our well-being.
That way you have a bigger vision and you have more of an understanding of who you are, what your purpose is, and then you can move on and you can do those things in the world today.
I do believe that, yes. And I also believe, and this is a personally held belief or perspective, that it's going to get considerably worse before it gets better. And yet I feel and I find that as things worsen, there's an imperative that people feel to heal and to evolve, to grow, and to be of service. And so I noticed that after years of providing training for shamanic healers, I began doing that 13 years ago. There's a sense of urgency that's present now that I didn't feel then.
Mhm.
And people no longer feel that they have the luxury of time before heeding the call to be of service and to evolve spiritually. And I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that more people feel that now is the time, and we don't have the luxury of dilly dallying. We don't have the luxury of waiting.
Mm.
We must act. And for me, that means embracing our medicine, cultivating our medicine, embracing whatever our purpose is, and receiving whatever support, whatever training we need to in order to be able to bring our gifts forward in the service of humanity and of the planet. And so I'm very, very inspired to continue to train practitioners. And those I'm in the midst of training now feel this tremendous sense of urgency about becoming potentiated, becoming well trained, becoming skilled, because their skills are going to be needed. And so increasingly, I feel like my students are the spiritual first responders that humanity and the planet need. And of course, broadly within the broader shamanic community, I see that globally there are many, many teachers training practitioners at this time. And
Mm.
it's such a privilege to be able to help people discover their gifts and their medicine and activate their medicine for the benefit of all beings. And
Mm.
that's what my life is devoted to. That's the primary focus of my work, is training practitioners and teachers so
Mhm.
that people can take positions of leadership and provide support within their communities as healers and as teachers, provide refuges
Mm.
within their communities for people to become empowered, to heal, to transform, and to discover their medicine and to become potentiated themselves. And so it just ripples out further and further
Mm.
into the communities where these beautiful practitioners live.
Well, I also think that having these kind of conversations, and being aware of, again, having people like yourself, where people can reach out and people actually can find out and learn more about it. Because for me as an individual on this beautiful planet is being open
Mhm.
to anything that comes my way, of course good. But being open and receiving, I think it's a very, very important thing, instead of being closed-minded. Because I can say it from my own experience that about 20 years ago, even though I now know that I used to be very spiritual, but I was not open to receive that information. And going through
Mhm.
the hard time that I went through and really opening up and receiving this information has changed my trajectory of my life, unbelievably. So I'm super grateful for that.
Yes. And if I may, what helped you become willing to open? What helped you become courageous enough to open?
Um, my goodness. I think it was the will of me not giving up and
Yeah.
being that, you know what, I do have a purpose on this earth. And I have three beautiful children. They're older now, but it was more of, I have to be there. I have to support them. I have to be there for them. I have to be there for my family. And I have to spread my wings and the things that I do in my practice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, is humanity heading towards a good place? Like you said, I think I feel it too, that we are gonna go for a little bit bumpy ride, but are we gonna come out on a good side?
I believe we are.
That's good. Keep
And
your
perhaps
fingers crossed.
yes, indeed. And perhaps the challenges that we're currently facing and will continue to face will inspire us to cultivate stronger resources, greater resiliency, more tools in our toolkits, and may inspire us to look to spirit for guidance and wisdom and purpose and meaning. And so, in that way, the difficulties may serve us well.
I think without bumps on the road, either it's your personal life or the global scale, without that, we wouldn't be able to be open and
Hmm.
receiving the good or asking for a change. Um, how can someone begin to cultivate a relationship with a spirit or a spirit guide? And what should they take from that kind of experience?
Yes. Well, as I mentioned previously, I started teaching people how to journey in 2003, and I continue to offer that as my introductory workshop. The first step in the process of learning about this path and beginning to cultivate relationships with the helping spirits. And I offer that same curriculum within a few different formats. So, as a virtual 3 day workshop, as a non residential 3 day workshop in person, but in a non residential setting, and then as a residential retreat. And the reason I do that is to try to meet people's needs. Because for some people, all they can manage is to join me virtually, whether because they live overseas or because of their childcare schedule or their work schedule or the combination of those two things. Some people can manage a 3 day workshop as long as they stay at home where they are in the place where they live. And then for others, they can go on retreat and take the time away from their day-to-day lives and have a more immersive experience. And although I know there are many beautiful resources available, just as you were describing earlier, when you decided that you wanted to try to journey to meet with the white wolf, so you discovered, I know there are a great many resources. And what I love to suggest is for people to come together in community, because this work has always been practiced in community. And so, one of the reasons I'm so inspired to continue teaching introductory workshops is to bring people together to help forge friendships and collegiate relationships that will be enduring. And so, I would say, come to a workshop and learn in community and develop a really strong foundation. I challenged myself many years ago to teach a sufficiently comprehensive introductory workshop that if the participants never read another book or never went to another workshop regarding shamanic journeying, they would have a strong foundation. They could be self-sufficient. They would have met helping spirits that they can continue journeying to meet, and they would have tools and skills, and they would know how to navigate in the invisible realms because it's different than our physical world. And it takes time to get used to that. And so I would say, come to a workshop and learn in community and take the time to establish a strong foundation that you can then build upon as a practice for the rest of your life.
It's so important to be in community and to
Mm-hmm.
share experiences and to just being connected with other human beings.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yes. Yes, and to connect around our spiritual practice, to have friends that we can talk to about helping spirits, for that to be normal among those people, which is so relieving. I think a lot of people feel a kinship with the spirit world and a connection, but they don't always have anyone to talk to about it, and they may not feel comfortable bringing it up with family members or coworkers. So it's wonderful to go to a workshop and discover 20 or 30 like-minded people. Suddenly you have a whole gaggle of people that you could reach out to and you could keep practicing with.
Yeah.
And so it's so beautiful to have that. It's such a valuable resource.
Very, 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 very smart. And I think again too, community is everything, I think, going forward.
Hmm.
Um, so it's very nicely said. This will bring me, because we deal with all different kinds of people, and how do you address, for example, um, skepticism? Because obviously there is a lot of people who think that this is a woo-woo thing. So how would you address that?
Well, certainly on a case by case basis, as you can imagine, people express skepticism to me in a variety of ways. Usually, what I suggest is try to see if you can have your own direct experience. So don't take my word for it, because oftentimes what skeptics need is to be convinced themselves through direct experience. They need evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say, well, don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. And that could be with a practitioner who leads you on a guided journey and walks with you into the invisible realms and accompanies you while you meet with your helping spirits, or come to a workshop. Find, if not myself, then another well trained teacher who can help you learn how to journey as part of a community. Have your own direct experience, and then you become the authority. So don't make me the authority, make yourself the authority.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, what I find with skeptics is that they just need to know for themselves. They need to have their own evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing someone else's story may be inspiring or compelling, but it doesn't provide the evidence that they need. And yet, having their own direct experience does. And I've noticed this again and again with circles as people begin to journey initially, come to an introductory workshop, and then maybe join a year-long program. As time goes on and as they have more experiences with the helping spirits, again and again, I heard people saying, you can't make this up. Like, you can't possibly make this up. I mean, the synchronicities and the beautiful experiences that people have, I mean, they're just mind boggling. And you do just get to a point where even very skeptical people say, okay,
Let
I
me
can't
try.
maintain, that's right. I can no longer maintain my posture of skepticism. I've had so much evidence to the contrary.
Yeah.
But I support people in finding their own evidence. You don't need to take my word for it.
Yeah.
Find out for yourself. And that's what I love about journeying, is that there's no intermediary. So you're not putting yourself in the hands of an authority. You're becoming the authority.
Mm.
You're establishing a direct relationship with the helping spirits. There's no intermediary. And so you become your own authority. And that's why learning how to journey is so empowering. And that's certainly my posture as a teacher. I want to empower people. I
Mm.
don't want to stand between you and your helping spirits. I want you to have a direct relationship with them. You become your own authority. That's what we need. More people who accept their spiritual authority. We need that. And so I want people to cultivate that from the perspective of their own experience. And
Mm.
so I would say, come and try.
Beautifully said. You just gave me goosies because I said the same thing. I'm like, again, it comes to the whole point of literally being open. Don't close it. Try it for yourself. If you don't like
Hmm.
it, it's okay. You can leave and then come back next time. Maybe you'll be a bit
Hmm.
more open with the idea.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
what would be, or what is the most important lesson that shamanic
Hmm.
teachers teaches us about
Hmm.
ourselves and our connection to the universe?
Hmm. I would love to pick up my rattle, Alexandra, and ask the helping spirits that question. May I do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. helping spirits would like everyone listening and observing to know that you're not alone, and more importantly, that you are held by the spirit world with unconditional love and acceptance, that you belong with spirit, and that whether you're aware of them or not, your helping spirits are with you and they're dedicated to your well being, and they hold you with such care and tenderness and immeasurable love. And they're just waiting to be able to show you that directly and to offer you that experience directly so that you can feel our interconnection and so that you can feel less alone. I think so many people right now suffer from a sense of isolation and aloneness. And the helping spirits want us to feel how loved we are and how connected we are and how held we are by them.
Mm, thank you. Beautiful
You're
message.
welcome.
And I think that a lot of people hopefully can relate to this.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Would there be any
Mhm.
final thought, Julie, that you'd like to share?
Well, a wholehearted invitation to your viewers and listeners. I would love to welcome you into my community and share more teachings and mostly empower you to learn how to journey yourselves and connect with your own beautiful helping spirits. And so, if I may, I'll be coming to Ontario in June, from June 9th to June 13th. I'll be leading a retreat at Bloom Holistic Retreat Center, which is just outside of Kingston. And this is a very intentional choice on my part. As an adolescent, I lived in the Toronto area, and I'm an alumni of Queen's University. But I haven't been back to that area since, I think, 1995 or 1996. I graduated in 1995, shortly after I graduated. And I'm very intentionally seeking to cultivate community in Eastern Canada after having lived for many years in the United States, here in Western Canada too. But I want to begin to build community in Eastern Canada. And so I warmly invite you to join me at Bloom, this beautiful retreat center on this gorgeous lakeside property just outside of Kingston,
Oh,
for an immersive retreat.
beautiful. And how can people connect with you or get information, how to sign up?
Yes, so on my website, which is juliemkramer.com. So my middle initial M as in Marie, Kramer.com, and all of my offerings are listed there. And of course, if anyone would like a referral to a practitioner, please feel free to contact me through my website, and we will provide you with a referral for someone who's a beautiful practitioner, well trained, and very skilled and gifted, who can offer you spiritual healing support.
Oh, that's wonderful. Julie, thank you so much today for this beautiful conversation. I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your gifts with us. Um, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for your kind invitation, and thank you for your openness and curiosity.
Thank you.
Thank you.